Right now at 4, the stock market plunged today amid fears over the coronavirus, with trading briefly stopped and the Dow Jones dropping more than 2,000 points at times. And the Florida Health Department is now asking some international travelers to self-isolate for 2 weeks after returning here. The major differences between that advisory and the one Florida health officials put out earlier in the day. Plus, the mixed messages after the State Department urged all Americans to avoid taking cruises because of the coronavirus. The vice president says we should expect some major changes to cruising this week to make it safer for everyone. Good afternoon, I'm Vanessa Eccles.
And I'm Greg Wormuth. That message came within 24 hours of another message from the State Department telling people not to cruise. Here is the latest on COVID-19. According to the State Health Department, 13 people were diagnosed in Florida, including one woman in Volusia County. 5 people were diagnosed and isolated in another state. 2 people have died. 115 test results in Florida are still pending, and 302 people are currently being monitored. Channel 9's Lauren Seabrook has been following the spread of this virus for us extensively, and she joins us in studio. Lauren, the State Health Department put out a pretty shocking advisory earlier today.
Greg, originally the department sent us a release saying it was advising everyone who travels internationally to self-isolate when they return to the U.S. for 14 days. But then 2 hours later, it changed its tone. It's now saying anyone who travels to countries considered level 3 are mandated to self-isolate for 2 weeks, and anyone who goes on a cruise ship anywhere or travels to a country considered level 2 should limit interactions with others for 14 days and is advised to self-isolate if you become symptomatic. The cruise industry is a multi-billion-dollar part of Florida's economy, and stocks for companies like Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Princess, and Norwegian sank over the last month. Many of them are down 20% just today. One day after the U.S. State Department told U.S. citizens, particularly travelers with underlying health conditions, they should not travel by cruise ship. The CDC notes an increased risk of infection of COVID-19 in a cruise ship environment. But the messages are mixed because just 24 hours before the State Department put out that warning, Vice President Mike Pence was in Florida side by side with cruise leaders.
To ask them to step up their efforts to protect the health and safety of their passengers, their crews, and the communities to which they all return.
Pence says this week we can expect to see significant changes to cruising. He says companies will be enhancing the entry and exit screening process, testing on board for the coronavirus, discussing new quarantine standards with the CDC, and working with the federal government on ways to transport anyone who tests positive to a land facility. He also reminded the American public
the cruise line industry has a strong public health record and has been a strong partner in maritime security with the United States Coast Guard.
And our governor is expected to speak about coronavirus at 5 o'clock today. I'll be listening to that press conference, and we'll have any updates for you on Eyewitness News at 5 and 6. Vanessa?
All right, we'll check back in with Vanessa in a second, but Disney officials say they're also keeping a close eye on the coronavirus. The company's chief medical officer says the park is taking precautions like special training for cast members, more frequent cleanings, and easy access to hand sanitizer. Disney says it also has people staying in touch with health officials to talk about ways to prevent exposure to the virus in all of its theme parks. And some parts